I hereby summon all my imps. Hey everybody, it's Animal. One of the things that I like to do from time to time, and one of the things that I like to have happen, is I like to watch the Cozy Snap every single week. And usually when I'm doing it, I kind of give commentary in my real life. I'll be talking to the screen. So that's what I'm going to do now, is just talk to the screen. If you like this, I might do this in the future. If you don't like watching this with all the starts and the stops, and me talking over half of it, I'm going to put the link in the description on the YouTube video so you can watch this live. So let's give this a try and see how this goes.
What's up, guys, and welcome back. Which cards can you play on turn 6 to win the most cubes from your opponent? Which archetypes need some love, and what do they need specifically to be more competitive? And by the numbers, what are the highest and lowest played cards in Snap, and which cards have the best winning percentage? We're going to talk about all that and more on today's episode of the Snapchat. And as always, I am joined by Mr. Alex. 20 weeks. One more half a year for our Snapchat, man. How you doing this week?
I'm doing great, Cozy, and I can't believe it's been 20 weeks, honestly. 20 weeks of, by far, my favorite thing that I do in Marvel Snap, and I can't wait for the next 20, Cozy. I got to be honest with you.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's 3 months away, and I've been playing for almost a full year. That's around when I got accepted into the beta of Marvel.
Yeah, it would have been nice if I got put into the beta, too. But not everybody got to be put into the beta, Cozy.
Marvel Snap. But it's definitely been a big week. We had, obviously, Master Molds come out. We're making our way through the season.
That'll be nice to see in about 2 months.
Tell me about Nimrod, Master Molds. How's everything going right now?
I think it's going really well. I mean, I think that Master Mold looks like a really awesome card. I have not had the opportunity to buy it in my shop yet, but it's one of the ones that I think I'm going to pin. Like, I've had Stature pinned, and I almost bought Stature. I wanted to buy Stature so mad, and
I like Stature, honestly.
And, I decided not to because I felt like Master Mold was a card I really wanted to experiment with. And I'm hearing some good reviews, honestly. You posted a great video about it. I got really hyped up watching that. So, I mean, I feel like I got to get it.
Dude, he's definitely, he feels like one of the better cards to come out. If not the best one this year. Right with Sauron, in my opinion. He just does, like...
Sauron was so weird.
Like, Sauron kind of elevates the Zero archetype so much. And he does that for Disrupt. But at the same time... him only being 2 costs is what it is. Like, he can fit so much. Card draw or limiting card draw is so much better than people think, too. I mean, it is crazy that you can actually use him in a pretty versatile manner. But, Alex, we got some big...
He can break your hand. If you buy him and play him, he can really break your hand. Not your hand, but your opponent's hand.
Subjects today, man. Some really big subjects, some fun ones. We're revisiting one that we talked about, I think, on one of the first or second episodes in the Turn 6 surprise cards. That's what we're going to lead off with.
Again, error, and error.
But on your side of the channel, what are we talking about?
We're going to be talking about the series drops that's coming in March. It's going to be landing basically next week or so, right? So that's fantastic news. We're also talking about our favorite cards that we've been playing so far this season, which is I love these card conversations. They're by far my favorite that we have. And then Thanos and Shuri nerfs are incoming. We know that, and we have some potential token shop changes. So we're going to be discussing that as well, Cozy.
Yeah, next week's going to be big, man. We know for sure that the Thanos and Shuri are getting nerfed, which just means balance, patch, update, and I think there's...
I talked about that yesterday, Tuesday, about what I wanted for the Shuri and the Thanos buffs and nerfs. I did the nerfs, and I'll do the buffs next Tuesday. About a few cards I think could be buffed.
There's going to be a lot that comes with that this time, and hopefully just give some nice shifts and changes of the wind in the sails of the meta of Marvel Snap. So, how's rank going? The new 5+ rank thing is crazy, man. It is hyper boosted. Not just myself, but like everyone I talk to is either hitting infinite.
I do like that 5 boost bonus. It's helping me out a ton, so let me climb.
Way easier, or they're getting to their rank that they're trying to get to a lot easier. It feels...
It's better than it was because they had like nothing originally.
Almost too good.
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy for me because like lately on a personal level, like I haven't had as much time to play as much as I usually do.
Okay.
And so my focus has been like when I do play, I want to have a high win rate, right? So I've been trying to like really focus up and play well. And I'm climbing very quickly, very quickly. And I feel like that those extra 50 cubes made a big difference for me. And
Yeah, it helps. You know, even if you're at 70 going to 100, that's 15 cubes you don't have to earn anymore.
I'm approaching infinite. We'll put it that way. I'm not quite there yet, but I believe I'll be there within the next day or two.
Nice, gotta get that golden X-Men card back. Well, Alex, let's go ahead and talk about the first subject here, and it's the one we're revisiting, the Turn 6 surprise cards. These cards equal cubes, right? The cards that really take your opponent by surprise. I think we're gonna talk about the obvious meta options, but then some more sleeper kind of surprise cards. And in my opinion, the sleeper ones are almost better, right? Because the meta ones, everybody's
Okay, I'm gonna see if they talk about Warpath here.
anticipating Arrow, right? But the other ones get a little bit more cheeky, a little bit more surprise under the belt. So, Alex, I wanted to start with like the top options here, and then we'll kind of talk about some sleeper ones, right? So, obvious, you know, we don't need to always repeat ourselves, but currently we know the top ones are going to be things like, obviously, Arrow, who is still just such a good...
Arrow is so good that you could basically change that 7 into a -7, and it's still see play, because it just bricks a lane.
surprise card of getting good cubes. And do you still use Arrow? She's a card to me that you know I've loved forever.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I'm ashamed to admit. I should have picked up on Arrow earlier. Like you were telling me about how much you loved Arrow, like legitimately, like you had a romantic obsession with Arrow.
Episode
and
1.
like I understood it. Yeah, I understood it, but like I for some reason was like, it's a good card. And then as I started to really try to progress my skill in the game and like, you know, play competitively and stuff like that, I realized just how good this card was.
Yeah, because she basically destroys a lane. She says that wherever you're playing, that lane's not going to be played at this point. You can basically lose a lane with Arrow. It means that you're winning the other 2 lanes. You can literally put her on a lane that you're going to lose and not care what the power point is if you got the spots.
So the point is like playing Arrow on turn 5, it's like you don't want to waste this card. Like it's a win condition at so many different stages of the game. So like Arrow on turn 6 is still an immensely valuable card because
Yes.
like you're right. If you're winning 2 locations, I'm often in a situation where like they've snapped on me and I'm thinking, you can't win.
Yeah,
you
right.
can't win. I have Arrow. I have initiative. There's nothing you can do. You could Doctor Doom. You could do whatever you want. You're not going to win. And sure enough, they play a card and I'm just like, Arrow, and I'm like, man, you got to know that. You got to know that Arrow's the play. And it's funny you call it a surprise card. I'm telling you this.
It's not that surprising. You see it played against you all the time. Now, if you play a Swarm deck in Marble, Arrow kind of loses her power, but so many people don't play Swarm decks when you get up to higher ranks. You're down to playing like 2-3 cards for your entire game.
This right now, podcast listeners, you should not be surprised when Arrow drops on turn 6 anymore. The card's too damn good. Expect it.
I'm glad you said that because the ones I'm going to list here are ones that are surprise cards. But at this point, when you're doing your final calculations, and this is why the game's so tough, you have to kind of like jog through what they could play. And typically you're looking at their deck, right? And you're like, all right, this deck could have X, Y, Z. Arrow kind of fits into most decks. So I would say Arrow, nowadays, obviously, listen, guys, if you have a big power card out on the board, there's no more being surprised. Shang-Chi is most likely going to destroy you.
Shang-Chi shows up all the time. It's one of the most rare cards, but you can basically work around it if you know what you're doing.
Your best card. So like you almost need to anticipate that ahead of time and maybe build up with smaller power in some of the other lanes. And that I always anticipate Arrow, Shang, and honestly nowadays, obviously he's just way with the Sandman, but also with several other kind of shifts. Doctor Doom.
I haven't seen Doctor Doom in a while.
Is now, you just need to add 5 power across the lanes. It just needs to happen. And so those to me are probably the...
I don't think he's that bad. I think he's about fair.
The 3 biggest, with one that I'm a...
See, that's where I would basically go back to Red Skull, because this is basically 15 also. the 615 without any downside. So that's what you can do with the Red Skull, which I was talking about a couple days ago.
About to talk about. Is there any other like big time meta ones before we get to the sleeper options?
Yeah, I think that you nailed it, by the way, because like it used to be like, do I lose to Leader? Now it's, do I lose to Arrow or do I lose to Doom? Those are the two that
I never really lose to Doom.
really go through my head. The one that I think is an obvious one is Magneto.
Thank you. That's who I was pulling up. Okay, so I was going to say this is the one that people forget about the most, probably.
Magneto seems like a big bad, but there's a lot that you can do around Magneto, because he only works on the 3s and the 4s. And sometimes if you set up your 3s and the 4s, right, you're not even playing that many 3s and 4s in a deck sometimes.
Yeah, oh my, look at that. Split gold with,
Hey,
oh, cozy.
right? Hey.
You trying to win your own competition or what, buddy?
Dude, how cool is this? Yeah, if you guys don't know, I'm actually hosting a competition. The video should be out this week of the best variant Marvel Snap. We have insane submissions, bro. Like, I thought mine were great, and I just like, I'm going to go sit in the corner and cry. But
I wish I had more variants, but it's too expensive of a hobby.
yeah, Magneto is the card that he's so good. And Alex, it's because of the 3 and 4 cost cards, man, right now. Like, he pulls 3 and 4s.
Atrix.
And all of these are so good to pull at the moment. Like, dude, someone can build up a Venom to 1 billion power or Dracula, and you just pop it over.
Yeah. And I got to be honest with you, I don't know. And this is something you could potentially answer someone in the comments. The thing that I find difficult with Magneto is that, like, even when you know Magneto's coming, like, he's a staple in, like, for instance, Thanos decks, right?
Yep.
Even when you know, like, they're going to play Magneto here, it's hard to do the math around what he pulls, what ends up going.
I'm not sure it's that hard to do the math on.
Like, I'm actually not sure, like, Arrow, for instance, pulls randomly, whatever's dropped, right? Like,
Yep.
Like if the location fills up, it pulls a random card, for instance,
Yep.
right? So if they play 3 cards, but there's only 1 spot, it pulls one of the random 3.
That's the thing. If it pulled in the order that you played, even if that was just an errata that was put on there, that would make that card a lot better. Lord's power distribution a lot.
It's not turn order, or play order, I should say. With Magneto, I'm not sure if there's a play order factor there or if it's random like Arrow. I think it's random, isn't
I'm
it?
pretty sure it's random. Like, I just lost a game
See, that's one of the things that you just need to fix in general, is just make it play order for both of those.
today, actually, where I had him on the left lane. The guy ended up playing a couple cards. I only pulled 1. I needed to pull 2. If I pulled, I think their Dracula I won, I pulled their Cosmo, and I was like, bummer, right? So I think it is somewhat random. I know Arrow, essentially, it shuffles the cards and then just puts them out, right? That's
Interesting.
kind of what they said. And honestly, how you fix arrows, you make it more predictable. I think we've already talked about that. But yeah, Magneto also kind of hard to calculate, and you don't know where he's going to pull from. And obviously, you know, Maximus, there's some big cards in the 3s and 4s that can severely affect the play. But yeah, those are the big ones, right? I would say the only...
I wish you would talk about Warpath, and I wish you would talk about Claw, because I think those two can be big cube stewards a lot.
one that is also getting a lot bigger just because of Sherry's presence now. And almost, I kind of always, if I see a big power card and I don't have priority, Alex, I almost always assume that Arnim Zola is going to kind of make his way in. I think he's gone from a sleeper pick to more of a dominant pick.
Arnim Zola can win you games, just straight on out. Arnim Zola can win you so many games. It's not even a question of how much games that Arnim Zola can win you.
Nowadays.
You know what? I would argue that Arnim Zola still catches people by surprise because, like, a lot of people are moving away from Zola in the Shuri list because of the prevalence of armor and Cosmo, to protect the Shuri'd card. So, like, Arnim Zola, I think, is an interesting spot where I think you can still catch people by surprise, Cozy. And I think it works really well, actually, in Devil Dinosaur. I've used that many times, right? So, I think it's a cool card.
He works really well with Devil Dinosaur.
What I'll say is he is good for surprising Arnim Zola cards. So obviously, like Black Panther, if you see a Black Panther and you're not retreating by now and you haven't done the math, that's on you, right? Like that's obvious he's going to come. If you see a giant Red Skull, it's that or Taskmaster. But like Devil or cards where people typically just play other options, Maybe I can fit him in my Ronin Master Mold list, right? Like, I don't know if anyone...
That'd be an interesting thing. Play him on Ronin and double the Ronin. That could be really good. Or Dark Hawk.
One would expect that, but you have Mystique, so you don't really need to as much. But yeah, if you play him with the right ones, actually, I would agree with you there. If you play him with cards that aren't as, hey, I'm going to get Artem Zola, options.
Yeah.
So I would agree there.
Yeah, I think the last one that is like, we'll say meta and more common would have to be Chavez. Like, you usually account for Chavez being in a list, right? Especially if it's like anything with a lockjaw. If you see Jubilee come out, you know that like Chavez is probably there. So I think that usually in a lot of lists, you can determine like, hey, they at least have Chavez, right? Like, so I think that's the thing we got to account for as well.
You know who Chavez surprises the most, though? Like, by far? Is myself. I always forget I have her. And I'm like, have you been in that situation where you're like,
all the time, buddy. I'm like, I just need to draw this on turn 6.
I hate Chavez because of that particular point. The number of times where it gets to turn 6, and I'll just be sitting there going, oh my god, I wish I could draw something else, but I know I'm going to draw Chavez. It's just wrecking me.
It's like, and it comes out like...
It does the animation. You're like, damn you. Yeah, exactly. So Claw, obviously, really good. They are
going to talk about Claw.
I'm still convinced that if you put in the effort and the knowledge and you really script out your battles, right? Like, you really have a game plan and going in, which is, I feel like most of the people launch up the phone and they're like, let's see what the hell happens, right? But honestly, we talked about them plenty.
Heimdall's just not that good.
But I still think that Heimdall might be the top 3 surprise card in the game. If you know what you're doing, if you truly know what you're doing, but it is risky. It is risky because what if they go Red Skull Shuri left lane, right? Then like, what are you gonna do?
I think one of the things worth noting as well, Cozy, is that like we always talk about how Heimdall could be most powerful in non-move decks, but like you don't see it. Like people don't experiment with it, and I really wonder about it because Heimdall. I think we talked about this. I think months ago. Heimdall could be a 6/9. I think.
Yeah.
I think it could use a little extra power because if it had that extra power, I think it could move out of just straight up move lists. But then again.
Yeah, but it's kind of like putting death in a move deck. Also, just saying that, hey. A lot of times my move deck gets killed, so I'll just play Death, so in case they destroy my stuff, I'll have Death as a backup. Yeah, you can play it, but there's not really a point to it.
And if it moves out of move list and suddenly you have an extremely disruptive card that might be too good, right? Because the ability to just like, hey, surprise, shift it on over is like not insignificant. And if nobody expects it, then like it's at its strongest, right? But like effects like Vulture and obviously Multiple Man, like the move effects are good, but shifting over a couple lanes, man, that's strong.
Yeah, especially, we're going to talk about it more when we talk about deck archetypes that need love, because I do think there's some things that they can do to the card outside of just a power shift as well. It's funny, though, because if he became too popular, it'd be Arrow, where you're kind of like always expecting it even outside of moves, which I never think will be the case. But
I almost wish that Heimdall would get a buff where when you played him, you could pick left or right. Like there'd be a second command that came up or that when you play him, you choose left or right, so you lock in. So that way it's not always like, hey, they're playing a move deck. I know they're going to play Heimdall on 6. And I know it's going to all shift this way. I'd take too much coding, but I would like to see it.
Because of how strong he truly, or how much prep truly needs to go in. Now, for kind of like lower cost sleepers on the list, I played Snapster in an open, I guess is the best way to call it, or a clash, and it was really great. We drafted our decks, and I've got to say one of the MVPs of that entire battle. And this isn't just the first time as I try to blow by wherever the heck he is. I'm looking for the little Oscar Mayer. There he is, Juggernaut, Mr. Juggernaut.
Juggernaut is a good 6-drop card. I had somebody who played this against me where they put Juggernaut in one lane and they put the Cosmo in the other lane so that I couldn't get the on-reveal effect regardless of which lane I played in on that turn. It was a really good move.
I think Juggernaut is still so incredibly slept on as a surprise card. You wouldn't believe even though it's not an arrow that can dictate where your opponent is playing a card, man, if you did, if you played Sarah on 5, you could actually play Juggernaut Arrow on 6 together. And I don't know what world you want to do that in, but it's like an arrow light. And because of locations and because of strategic planning and how the decks are working at the moment, dude, he's good. He's definitely good.
I've been hit by a couple juggernauts in the past on turn 6, and it always takes me by surprise. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me! I can't believe it. Like,
yeah.
Juggernaut, really? And it's like it's always a good effect, right? I really love Juggernaut. Like when I was really kind of leaning into Silver Surfer, like this was by far my favorite card. And you actually said something really interesting: the idea of using Sarah in conjunction with Arrow. You can Sarah, Arrow, and Kingpin, by the way. Like, that is a combination that could be pretty lethal on turn 6, too. But, I mean, I love how you called him Oscar Mayer, by the way. Look at this variant. I love it
he
so
looks
much.
Like an Oscar Mayer winner, right? Like, a little bit. And
yeah, the song's playing in my head. But one thing I will say is, like, Juggernaut is definitely a surprise card on turn 6. No one's going to account for Juggernaut on turn 6.
Yep, no, without question. And obviously, cards that keep your opponent on edge. For me, man, you know what card I hate seeing? Like, I don't know about you, but there's just cards that, like, I don't like playing against. Honestly, and it's maybe because the last meta was just so brutal. But, dude, I hate Dracula.
Dracula's such a weird card because there's really nothing that you can do about it the entire game. Even end game, you can't do anything about it.
Hate Dracula lanes, right? Because you got to tell yourself it's going to be 20. Like, you just tell yourself, all right, it's infinite. Maybe it's not, but you have to tell yourself that. And I feel like it's just tough to gauge what it could be. And it's so hard to play around that lane.
What are you talking about? It's easy to know what it's going to be. If it's your opponent, it's Infinite. If it's you, it's Sentinel.
That's the X-Men Mansion effect. I got it. Okay.
Yes,
all right.
always, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Dracula's the best. And the nice thing about Dracula, too, is there a card in Marvel Snap that's more stressful than just staring at a Dracula sitting in a location because you know it's going to absolutely crit you? Like, it is a stressful card.
I just wish there was some way, maybe even some card in the future where they had it said that it would destroy a 4-cost card. Because that would be good for Dracula. And there's some other vampire hunters out there besides Blade that they can put in there, which would make sense for Dracula. Just hurts that there's really no way to counter this.
Card to have on the board because it's so unpredictable.
Hang on 1 second. That's it. I move. I move this. How do I do this? Okay, there we go. Yay! I figured it out. It's a little thing.
Him and Thor.
You can't plan around it. You put more power in that lane, you just give it because Dracula's there and it hits a Sentinel anyway. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right? I know. Oh, always. And then I end up like it's turn 6 and I'm like kind of spreading my cards and I'm like, well, I should probably just abandon the Dracula lane. And that's when he gets rid of a swarm and you're like, all right, great. Okay, that's fantastic. I do put him as a surprise card, right? Like, because you don't know what the opponent's going to pull out. And definitely, Zabu did get nerfed, but dude, a 3-cost Dracula? That value for that surprise?
Again, if you put a card in there that will later on there down the road just destroyed 4-cost card. One card that destroyed 4-cost cards. And you could balance it out for power and toughness. Power and energy. That just destroyed a 4-cost card. Dracula wouldn't be that big of a deal because he's got to sit on the board for 4, 5, and 6. So you have 3 turns to basically deal with him. But the problem is there's no card that deals with him right now. I don't know a single card that you could play that would say, hey, Dracula, you're not doing anything this time around.
You don't want to discount just the mental game that he plays. Right? Definitely a great mental game against other players. Now, I do have one more that I want to talk about, Alex, but I wanted to give you the floor. Any other ones that you would deem as The surprise cards that truly win some high amount of cubes. All the ones we've talked about are the ones that take your opponent that thought they had the victory, and you take it from their hands.
Yeah, I got one more, and it's an absolute beauty. It's Giganto. And I'll tell you why, Cozy. So everyone's stressed out about Leech, right? Let's just...
The main reason nobody plays Giganto at all. I don't even think if you got him leeched, about if you got him leeched, you might see him get play.
Just say, Leech is a hot topic nowadays. And I got to tell you, Giganto, I love holding Giganto in my hand. Leech comes out and they snap. I'm like, oh, yeah, you snap. You go ahead. You snap. Because you don't even know what's coming. It's a big, nasty monster that's going to drop as a 14 wherever the hell I want it to drop. No one accounts for Giganto. Nobody.
And it's funny, right? Because I do think he needs a buff, but because he's like lackluster almost in a sense too, it's a surprise enough that people don't expect him, right? Typically, obviously you could play other cards that can match that power close to it. But I gotta say, man, 14, especially not left. If he's leech, dude, I would never expect it as a leech. Yeah. Maybe an infinite.
100%. And I actually released a video yesterday that focused on Giganto. And what's crazy about it was that I had a location where I'm up by 10, and the opponent's like, no, there's no way he's not playing there, right? Boom, Giganto. And it's just he's like, what? It loses them the game because they just don't account for Giganto coming down as a 14.
I'm just so excited for hopefully us to get some power increases or just some big shifts, right?
Problem when you increase power is you kind of end up in this weird infinite circle where card A gets +2 power, and then you sit there and go, well, why shouldn't card B get +2 power? And then you sit there and go, well, then we'll give card B +2 power. And then you sit there and go, well, if card A and B have +2 power, then why don't we give card C +2 power? And then you sit there and go, I guess that makes sense. And then you get to the point where it's like, well, if A and B and C now have power, and then A really doesn't have that much power anymore, and we should really buff up A again. And it kind of gets into this weird infinite circle. There's gotta be cards that exist that don't have good power. Hulk at 12 is perfectly fine because he's a neutral card. He's supposed to be what it represents. Hey, this is a neutral card. This is what you're supposed to be playing. 6 for 12. Now, there's some of the neutral ones that need some buffs on them. I will agree to that even. But you can't sit there and say, hey, let's make Hulk 14. Because if you say, let's make Hulk 14, then why would you ever play Giganto?
Because there's so many fun cards that I think just need to get more play in general. But I want to talk about a low-cost card, Alex, that I probably see when I'm recording videos or I'm going up against players or I'm watching people. I've got to say, the card, and you love it, you talk about it all the time, I currently think that Killmonger is one of the most misplayed cards in Snap. Like the other day, I had a really good one.
The problem with Killmonger is that he works on all locations, and a lot of people try to Snap, throw him down on 3. You can play him on 4 or 5. He's not the best on 6. But sometimes when you're playing against Thanos, and you're playing against the Thanos deck, you just throw him down to get rid of the Quinjet, because I don't know, sometimes will save your decks.
Drop lane going, I had a lot of action in there, and they played Killmonger on 4, and I was like, oh man, you took that lane from me. Bummer. But you know what? If they would have played that on 6, I would have full committed to that lane where I wasn't expecting the Killmonger, especially with the Zeros and the Titanias these days. Killmonger, man, is such a good card to play on 6. It may be 5 if you Snap, but 6 especially. In the Thanos meta, I just see him played way too early, but he's definitely up there on my list as well.
Yeah.
The problem with him getting played early in the Thanos meta is because of the fact that you want to get rid of that Quinjet. That's the problem. I mean, there would be a part of me that wants to play this on 6 and just break their stones, and I get the point that you might want to break this on 6 to break their stone. But sometimes just playing it, just get rid of that Quinjet will break their stones good enough. But if down the road, if you come next Tuesday, they fix the interaction with the stones and Quinjet, we'll see what happens then. Because there's some confusion about how the stones are supposed to work with the Quinjet, because how the wording on Thanos is read. it says put the stones into your deck at the start of the game, and then the Quinjet says cards that didn't start in your deck. So it's like the stones technically started in your deck.
I've been playing Killmonger in tons of lists, and in people's defense of playing it early against Thanos, I think that it's worth playing if Quinjet's on the board.
Yes.
I think that if Quinjet's sitting there, you play your Killmonger on turn 3. But if Quinjet's not out there or you pull it late, definitely hold it for a later play. Completely wipe out their stones, especially if they're relying on like a Blue Marvel, for instance, for the power. But the crazy thing about Killmonger, one of the reasons why a month ago I put him on my top 10, was that if you think about the baseline power for a 3 cost, you're thinking about something like a Cyclops, Kingpin 3/4, right? And this is a 3/3. And think about how often it takes out like a Sunspot that's a 1/4. It takes out, a 0 and a Titania. That's 8 power. That's effectively like a 3/9.
It is.
It's crazy when you consider how much damage to the board state that a Killmonger can.
The problem with him is that if he even takes out 2 1-drops, and the 2 1-drops are just 1/2s, that's adding 4 power to your side of the board, with the 3 on top of him himself. So that's 4 plus the 3, which basically makes him like 3/7. Because you took away 4 from your opponent, which added basically 4 to your side of the board. Made it spread a little bit, but they still added 4 to your side of the board.
Do
A good chunk of the meta does get determined by tech cards, and Killmonger being one of those. And the second people whiff him not being in decks, the Zoo comes back out a little bit. But because we now have things like Titania, things like Ebony Maw with Sauron, once Sauron goes down even further, which he's now gone down to pool 4 starting next week, the Ebony Maws are going to be out a lot more. I can tell you with confidence, Ebony Maws as a free 1 play is so insane at any turn. It's so good. Probably one of the best parts about Sauron. Now, lastly, Alex, I did want to talk about probably my favorite surprise card that I'm still convinced is one of the best surprise cards. And statistically, he's in the top 5 as far as stats go as Cubes 1, and that's probably because of just bad people playing against the Patriot deck. But I gotta say, man, I think that Ultron, Alex, is so good.
I would completely disagree with you on Ultron being a good pick. And the reason that I'll disagree with you on Ultron being a good pick is because unless you can really set up the Kazar, Blue Marvel, Patriot, all that jazz, the Drone's just don't do enough. And he's not that high of a card drop as a 6/8 himself. But he's basically a 6/8, and then if you get some spots open, so he adds like 3, maybe 4. So he's like a 6/12 on most days. But adding 3-4 to a location really doesn't win you too many games, and that's the problem.
Outside of just your standard, fill them up in one lane and do the Ultron thing. I think there's so many ways to build decks around this. I want to make a surprise Ultron deck. It's going to be in my next coming videos in the next week or so. Dude, Ultron could do some magic, especially, I talked about this before, but the more that Kazar and the more that Blue Marvel is in other decks, you don't expect the Puppet Master, man. What do you think about him?
I think Ultron's a great card. I think that it's funny. It's been shoehorned very aggressively into Patriot, where it works very well, but that's not the only place it can go, right?
That's my thought.
And so I'd be really interested in seeing the kind of deck designs you come up with, because you tend to come up with really creative stuff. And the thing I like about Ultron too is that he's a 6/8, not a 6/9, not Shang-Chiable, which is going to be in everyone's deck. But yeah, I'd be interested in hearing how you think that Ultron can fit in other things that aren't Patriot.
He's going to be there'll be some testing for sure with him. But let's go ahead and go to our next subject, Alex, and that is deck archetypes that needs some love. And actually, this is a good transition, talking about Ultron and where else he can fit. Alex, I want to kind of briefly touch on all the archetypes right now in Snap. We can get a little carried away if we go and start talking about, Lockjaw and Thanos and really the sub-archetypes, but I want to stick to, the main ones. And
Alright, so we're just going to stop it here. We've kind of been going on for quite some bit. I want to see how well this actually does. So this is more of a test. If this does well, I might do more of these. If not, I'll figure out something else to do. So I want to thank you all so much for watching. And as always, remember, play for fun. Hey Trix, how's it going?